The big one that I want to get into, which was the subject of the ballot box, the mystery black box conspiracy in Georgia, is Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman. So in the wake of the 2020 presidential election, Rudy Giuliani, then personal attorney to former President Donald Trump, made numerous allegations over widespread voter fraud, focusing particularly on election workers Shaye Moss and Ruby Freeman. These accusations were prominently featured during hearings and in various outlets, leading to significant repercussions for both women. So here is the edited video and Giuliani's claims. Giuliani presented a video during a legislative hearing in December 2020, claiming it showed Moss and Freeman engaging in illicit activities while counting ballots at the State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia. In his assertions, Giuliani alleged that the two women were seen pulling ballots from under a table and counting them in secret, implying that they were involved in a conspiracy to manipulate the election results in favor of Joe Biden. This edited version of the video was misleading. Again, this is the video that was hours long, and you could clearly see on the footage that election workers at first left and they were called to go back. They kept having to keep voting, and then ballot boxes were pulled out from underneath the table from when they were brought in, and then clearly they resumed the counting. But in the video that was edited, it looks like this secret box, this 2-minute video out of like a 3+ hour video, this secret box was pulled out from underneath a shady table. And people are like, where did that come from? And if you see it on Twitter, like a 2-minute video, you're like, yeah, that looks suspicious. But it was purposely edited from a longer video, which Giuliani and Trump and his people both had, by the way. And they chose instead to circulate this 2-minute, completely edited out of context, completely infactual, just nowhere near showing what actually happened, and set Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss up for unprecedented harassment that no human should have to deal with. So this is what's going on right now. The edited version of the video was misleading. Giuliani and his allies selectively presented clips that omitted crucial context, framing the actions of Moss and Freeman as suspicious and nefarious. The video was intended to evoke concern over election integrity, suggesting that the women were participating in a coordinated effort to commit fraud. In the actual video, the full footage told a different story. The actual video showed that the ballots were being counted and they were legitimate, and there was no evidence of wrongdoing. Again, Trump and Giuliani were presented with the full video. You could go online and watch the full video. You can watch people walk through this who are election officials and people in Congress and whoever, saying like, this is what happened. This 2-minute video was completely edited out of context to make it look nefarious. And that's that. Election officials clarified that the, quote, suitcases that Giuliani referred to were simply standard ballot containers that had been mistakenly labeled as suspicious. Additionally, the counting was conducted in accordance with Georgia's election procedures. Independent observers, including members of both political parties. Again, there are so many Republicans that are going to Trump and his, inner circle that is somehow still with him at this point, saying, like, the jig is up. There's zero evidence. You're fucked. Just concede, save some face. People on both sides are pretty unanimous on this. Aside from the few people in Trump's inner circle, his group of strike force corrupt lawyers who will do anything he says, people in the DOJ, like that guy, not Jeffrey Rosen, the other guy, that was underneath Rosen that was like, yeah, I'll sign that fake letter if you make me attorney general. Like, aside from those people, like, people are pretty in agreement of like, yeah, there's nothing here. We'll watch the video. It's fucking bullshit. Additionally, the counting was conducted in accordance with Georgia's election procedures. Independent observers, including members of both political parties, were present during the counting process, which further corroborated the legitimacy of the operations conducted by Moss and Freeman. During a December 10th, 2020 appearance in Georgia, Giuliani falsely accused Ruby Freeman and Shaye Moss two black public servants shown in the Fulton County video of, quote, surreptitiously passing around USB ports as if they're vials of heroin or cocaine. In fact, Moss had been given a ginger mint by her mother, Ruby Freeman. You can see this in the actual, and I apologize for the disgusting phlegm removal. I've had some back trip today, and it's starting to build up after over an hour and 50 minutes recording the podcast, but we march on. There is a funny moment. I mean, it's not funny because Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman's lives were destroyed for a long time, but Freeman says, or Moss is questioned in the January 6th deposition, like, what is this USB drive vial of, heroin cocaine thing that Giuliani is talking about? And she's like, yeah, it was a ginger mint from my mom that she passed me. And Giuliani's like, yeah, they're smoking crack and counting ballots. And yeah, so that wraps up the Georgia case, which no one even, of 10% intelligence was taking seriously at all. If anyone who saw the full video, it was incredibly obvious what happened. The aftermath of the Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss accusations by Trump and Giuliani, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss were targeted by Trump and Giuliani hundreds of times in public statements and tweets. Trump publicly called them monsters. They were harassed incessantly, received hundreds of death threats, and fled their home for months. Imagine being targeted by the President of the United States, calling you a monster, tweeting over and over again that you are stealing the election by, smoking crack vials and counting ballots 3 times and pulling out this secret, black box of ballots was just normal procedure when you watch the full video, which Trump and Giuliani both had. Imagine being targeted by Giuliani and the President of the United States over and over again for months, and them both being tapped into this gang of hundreds of thousands of millions of people, just undying MAGA supporters who will do anything to appease Trump, their mothership leader. Imagine the harassment that these two women were facing, because I don't think that I can fully picture that. To have the President of the United States essentially put your head on a stake, release your photo and say, whoever brings me her fucking head gets a prize, which, calling her a monster on Twitter. There were people who gathered outside of Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman's house on January 6th. I cannot imagine the amount of vitriol and harassment that these two women went through that could have been totally prevented by Giuliani and Trump just not being two-faced fucking piece of shit scumbag liars. This is Ruby Freeman's testimony to the January 6th committee in the aftermath of the allegations by Trump and Giuliani. She says, "My name is Ruby Freeman. I've always believed it when God says that he'll make your name great. But this is not the way it was supposed to be. I could have never imagined the events that followed the presidential election in 2020. For my entire professional life, I was Lady Ruby. My community in Georgia, where I was born and lived my whole life, knew me as Lady Ruby. Now I won't even introduce myself by name anymore. I get nervous when I bump into someone I know at the grocery store who says my name. I'm worried about who's listening. I get nervous when I have to give my name for food orders. I'm always concerned of who's around me. I've lost my name. I've lost my reputation. I've lost my sense of security. All because a group of people, starting with number 45, President Trump, and his ally Rudy Giuliani, decided to scapegoat me and my daughter Shay to push their own lies about how the presidential election was stolen. Freeman's sense of dread is well-founded. According to federal prosecutors, a member of the Oath Keepers militia, convicted of multiple offenses for his role on January 6, had a document in his residence with the words death list written across the top. His death list contained just 2 names, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss. all the result of Trump and Giuliani. Giuliani was then, of course, brought to court by Ruby Moss and Shay Freeman for defaming them with no proof of election fraud, saying these things about them being drug addicts, triple counting ballots, being part of an election fraud scheme with zero evidence to back it up. Giuliani then admits in court that he made the whole thing up and that the First Amendment gave him the right to lie. Giuliani admits this. I lied because the First Amendment gives me the right to. I was lying about the whole thing. I made it up. I was talking out of my fucking ass. I was doing anything as Trump's puppet with his hand so far up my ass, who Trump has disavowed, by the way. Giuliani's nowhere to be found near Trump because Giuliani served his purpose for Trump. Giuliani was trying to spread election fraud lies and overturn the 2020 election. He failed. So Trump was like, I don't know that guy anymore. Giuliani made the whole thing up. First Amendment said the First Amendment gave him the right to lie, which, of course, the First Amendment does not protect speech that inflicts damage upon others, puts their safety in serious jeopardy, wrongfully and recklessly injures others' reputations, or incites others to commit violent acts, which pretty much Giuliani and Trump did all of the above to Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman. The court ordered in late 2023 that Giuliani was found guilty of defamation, of course, because there was nothing to back up his claims in Georgia, not a single shred of evidence or witness testimony from people on both sides, Republicans and Democrats watching the count. Giuliani was found guilty of defamation and spreading lies about Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, and he was ordered to pay them $148 million in damages. Giuliani then declares bankruptcy. He's going through a whole shitstorm right now where his assets, I think Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman were just given Giuliani's apartment, and then Giuliani has residences in Florida. He's trying to hold on to his expensive watches that were given to him and Giuliani's done. He staked his name and his reputation on complete and total utter bullshit lies for Trump about election fraud. Exposed Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, who are working to legitimately count election votes. He subjected them to months and months and years at this point of harassment and death threats, having to flee their homes. Their life becomes an absolute shitstorm. And now Giuliani's has as well, essentially losing everything. And then this is a common theme for people who support Trump. They lie. Trump convinces them to lie. Trump convinces them to put their reputation on the line. They do it. And then once they get, fucked up the ass, once they get staked and the court comes down on them, Trump disavows that person and says, I no longer know you. You served your purpose. Thank you. Almost like a mobster, like a Tony Soprano type. You worked for me, but now you're in jail. Just sit there and don't snitch. Fucking serve your time. You put your neck on the line for me. But now you're in jail and I don't associate with you anymore. But the difference is that mobsters often will take care of people in jail who don't snitch, whereas Donald Trump's like, yeah, I don't give a shit. Like, you're dead to me. So Shay Moss and Ruby Freeman, get that cash, that $148 million. I don't know how much of the $148 million you'll actually see, but you'll at least see a few mil. Hopefully a few dozen. So get those fucking cash, stack that paper. Giuliani's a piece of shit. So